the smell of my mother's baking. That was the smell of safety. Cinnamon and sugar clinging to the warm air in our little kitchen. Sunlight cutting through the window, catching dust motes dancing in the air. That was the smell of home. The sound of my dad's fountain pen scratching across his ledger books at the kitchen table. That was the sound of security. I would later sit at that same kitchen table, holding a number that shattered everything. They followed every rule. They saved. They didn't buy boats. They didn't gamble. They saved. And the system they trusted would later call it naivety. We thought we were safe. We were wrong. This isn't just their story. It's a warning, whispered from the wreckage. But we didn't know then that the first lie we'd been told wasn't about money, but about the very meaning of security. To understand the fall, you have to see the life they built. My childhood was a picture of middle-class stability. Our home, a modest 3-bedroom ranch, was built on love, yes, but also on prudence. On sick days from school, my mom would wrap me in a blanket on the sofa, and we'd watch The Price is Right, the sound of the big wheel a comforting hum in our quiet house. They came from a generation that valued security above all else. Work hard, save consistently, and trust the plan. My dad started his 401k the day he was eligible. I remember him teaching me how to change the oil in our old sedan, his hands steady and capable. "Always be prepared, kid," he'd say. That's how he treated their money. Once a quarter, he'd sit at that kitchen table with his statements, a proud smile on his face. "See this?" he'd tell me. "This is for your mom and me, so we never have to be a burden on you." It was more than money to him. It was a promise. My mother, the teacher, was the family bookkeeper. I remember her standing in front of her classroom, so full of pride and discipline. She applied that same focus to their finances, contributing to her own 403b. Together, they were model financial citizens with a portfolio their plan provider recommended. They never chased hot stocks. They held on during dips. They didn't get greedy. By the time my dad retired, their nest egg was substantial. They spread brochures for an RV across that same table. They imagined hosting future grandkids for holidays, the little ones running through the very yard I grew up in. Their financial advisor smiled at their last meeting. My mom voiced a small concern about the market looking shaky, but he just patted her hand. "You're in great shape," he said, walking them to the door with a confident thumbs up. "You're safe." Weeks later, my mom checked their balance online, her breath catching in her throat. The advisor's words echoed in her head, a mocking ghost. The invisible thread was already starting to unravel, and then the markets began to turn in a way no one saw coming. The first crack wasn't a bang, it was a tremor. The news was filled with talk of inflation, interest rates, a potential recession. The relaxed retiree my dad was supposed to be vanished, replaced by a man glued to the financial channels, his brow furrowed. Their portfolio, once a fortress, began to bleed, and they ran headfirst into a brutal concept they never knew existed: sequence of returns risk. It sounds academic, but its reality is a nightmare. It means a market downturn in your first years of retirement is a catastrophe. Why? Because when you're taking withdrawals to live on, you are forced to sell your assets when they are cheap. Each withdrawal carves out a huge piece of your portfolio, crippling its ability to ever recover. And that's exactly what happened. They were locking in their losses month by month, making the paper losses real. But the real devastation was still coming. The second wave of the storm was more vicious. My dad, always the picture of health, got a persistent cough he couldn't shake. The diagnosis was a gut punch, a rare, aggressive lung cancer, a cruel twist of fate. Their life became a blur of appointments and hospital visits, and with that, an avalanche of medical bills. They believed Medicare would be their shield, but they learned fast that Medicare is not a shield. It's a net full of holes. I remember my mom standing at the pharmacy counter, her face pale. The pharmacist slid her card back. "I'm sorry," he said. "This prescription isn't on the covered list." The silent humiliation in her eyes as she walked away, I'll never forget it. As she got back in the car, her hands trembled on the steering wheel. I could see her thoughts, unspoken but screaming in the silence. We paid our taxes. We saved. I taught for 30 years. I did everything right. Why is this happening to us? Why asterisk? The RV dream vanished overnight. It was replaced by the cold reality of a complex medical system and a hemorrhaging bank account. And then, Medicare failed us in a way I'll never forget. The months that followed were an agonizing descent. The security that had defined their home was replaced by a thick, suffocating blanket of stress. The easy laughter was gone, replaced by hushed, worried conversations that would stop the second I walked into a room. The first clear sign was small. My mom, a lifelong reader, secretly canceled her book club subscription. She told her friends she was just too busy. The truth was, she couldn't justify the $20 fee. Then, I saw her at the kitchen table, head bent under the lamplight, clipping coupons from the newspaper again, something I hadn't seen her do since the 90s. These weren't just budget cuts. They were daily reminders of their humiliation, of going backwards. I never thought I'd have to parent my parents. But here I was, budgeting their groceries and rationing their prescriptions. My phone would ring, and I'd hear my father's voice, hollowed out with shame, asking if I could cover their groceries this week. This was a man whose entire identity was built on being a provider. It was killing him faster than the cancer. After one of those calls, I just sat in my car in their driveway and cried. A quiet, still, hopeless moment where everything felt lost. The moment I realized the roles were reversed was unbearable. Rock bottom arrived on a gray Sunday afternoon. My dad asked me to sit with him at the kitchen table, the same table where he used to proudly show me his investment statements. The same table where they planned their RV trip. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor. He just pushed a single sheet of paper towards me. His hand, the same hand that taught me how to fix things, was trembling. It was what was left. The number was so small, so shocking I couldn't process it. The silence in the room was deafening. My dad just slumped in his chair, staring at the paper. "It's gone," he whispered, his voice cracking. And in that instant, a memory flashed in my mind. My dad, 20 years younger, hoisting me onto his shoulders after his Little League team won the championship, his laugh echoing across the field. Strong, a protector. Now, he was a broken man. "I worked my whole life," he said. "We did everything they told us, and it's all gone." My mom was standing at the sink, her back to us, but I could see her shoulders shaking. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a setback. This was ruin. But the worst number was still to come, the one that would measure the cost of my own survival. Losing everything isn't a phrase. It's a constant, grinding anxiety. Their lives, which should have been focused on my dad's health, became a maze of bureaucracy. My dad was buried in a guilt that was suffocating him. He felt he'd failed my mother. My mom was consumed by a quiet fear for a future that might not have my dad in it. I often caught myself wondering, what if it had been me? What if I had gotten that diagnosis and my mom was left all alone in that house with no one to fight for her? The thought was a cold knot in my stomach. The ripple effect hit me hard. I stepped in, paying bills, spending hours on the phone with insurance companies. My own financial goals, my emergency fund, it was all gone. It became their emergency fund. And I was furious at the system that let this happen. I remembered all the times they'd mentioned money worries and I'd brushed it off, thinking they were set. Should I have asked tougher questions years ago? Their crisis had become my crisis. Watching the two people I admire most deal with such indignity, something inside me snapped. The helplessness turned into a fierce resolve. I couldn't turn back the clock for them. But I made a promise. Their story had to become more than a tragedy. It had to become a lesson. I became obsessed with understanding everything that went wrong, so I could build a fortress where my parents only had a house of cards. And that obsession led me to the 4 critical failures that caused it all. Have you had to step in for your parents financially? Tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone, and you might help someone else feel less alone too. If you've watched this far, leave a candle emoji in the comments. It means you're building your fortress, and I'll light mine with you. And if you want to learn how to build a plan that can withstand a true crisis for you and for them, hit that subscribe button. Let's figure this out together. My family's heartbreak taught me that my parents weren't just unlucky. They were victims of an outdated model. Their tragedy gives us a survival kit, a blueprint for a real fortress. I'm going to break down the 4 critical failures and how you can promise yourself and your family that this will not happen to you. Actionable Step 1. Diffuse the sequence of returns. Time bomb. The solution is a bucket strategy. Think of it like stocking your kitchen for a long winter. Bucket 1. The fridge. This is 1 to 3 years of essential living expenses in an ultra-safe, high-yield savings account. It's for easy access. When the market crashes, you live on this. You don't touch your investments. Bucket 2. The pantry. This is 5 to 10 years of living expenses in conservative investments like short-term bonds. Its only job is to restock the fridge. Bucket 3. The deep freezer. This is the rest of your money, invested for long-term growth. Because your immediate needs are covered by the fridge and pantry, you can let this food stay frozen, riding out any storm without panicking. This changes a market crash from a crisis into an inconvenience you can wait out. Actionable Step 2. Build a healthcare war chest. My parents thought Medicare was a shield. It was Swiss cheese. A diagnosis should not mean bankruptcy. Maximize a health savings account, HSA, now. An HSA is a secret weapon. It's a 401k just for healthcare. Max it out. Investigate long-term care insurance. This isn't just about money. This is about whether your daughter has to bathe you or just hold your hand. The cost of care will destroy almost any nest egg. Start researching it in your 50s. Budget for Medicare's gaps. Medicare does not cover everything. You must budget for predictable costs like dental, vision, and hearing aids. Actionable Step 3. Embrace true diversification and de-risking. As you near retirement, your goal must shift from growth to preservation. Rebalance and de-risk. Intelligently. In the 5 to 10 years before you retire, you must gradually shift your portfolio to be more conservative. Consider income annuities for a portion of your savings. An annuity can create a guaranteed paycheck for life, like a private pension. It creates an income floor that isn't tied to the market, covering essentials no matter what. Diversify beyond paper assets. True diversification means multiple income streams from things that don't care what the stock market is doing. Actionable Step 4. Prioritize your estate plan before it's an emergency. These documents are an act of love. Don't leave your family a mystery. Leave them a map. Get a durable power of attorney for finances. This lets someone you trust pay your bills from your own accounts if you can't. Establish a healthcare power of attorney and living will. These ensure your medical wishes are honored and spare your family from making agonizing choices. Have the talk with your parents now. This is the hardest step, but it is not optional. Start by talking about your own planning. Mom, Dad, I was just setting up my own will and it made me realize I have no idea where your important documents are. Could we go over it just so I know how to help if anything ever happens? The story of my parents is a story of a broken promise. The dream died in the same room it was born. That little kitchen, at that simple wooden table. They did their part, but the system they trusted, the simple 401k-focused path, proved to be a house of cards. Here's the hard truth. A 401k is not a plan. It's an account, a tool, and it can fail if it's the only tool you're relying on. You are the architect of your own financial security. My parents' story doesn't have a happy ending, but yours can. This story was hard to share, but I knew I had to, because others need to hear this warning. If this helped you feel seen, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who still has time. She trusted her daughter with everything, but when the will was read, it was clear someone had been planning her betrayal for years. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happened next. Now it's your turn. Build the fortress they never had. Watch this next for another gripping tale of retirement gone wrong, plus the lesson you can't afford to miss.